Okay, I see live. I don't see that it's recording.
Yes, we are live and recording.
Okay, there we go. Okay. Good evening, everybody. It is 7 o'clock on Thursday, August 6th. And so I am calling the first regular meeting of the 107th year of Paradise Valley School District. Our governing board meeting is now called to order. I would ask that you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, and then immediately following, may we please have a moment of silence. We unfortunately experienced the loss of a member of our PV family, Beverly Gates, a paraeducator at Greyhawk. So immediately after the pledge, we will have a moment of silence. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Ms. Chisholm, may we have roll call, please?
Yes, Dr. Skidmore.
Present.
Mrs. Matura.
Here.
Mrs. Greenberg.
Here.
Mrs. Case.
Here.
And Mrs. Bacon.
Here.
Thank you very much. Approval of agenda. Dr. Welsh.
Thank you, President Greenberg. Items approved by consent will not come up for discussion during the meeting, but will be approved when the agenda is adopted. This is possible since members of the governing board receive the agenda along with backup materials at least 24 hours prior to the meeting and have time to review and consider all items. Prior to the agenda being adopted, members of the governing board may ask that an item be removed from the consent agenda and brought to the floor for discussion at the appropriate place on the agenda. I would like to offer the agenda as posted, noting that we do have amended backup material for item H4.
Thank you, Dr. Welsh. Is there, well, Dr. Skidmore, may I have a motion?
So move.
Is there any discussion? Does any member of the board wish to remove anything from the consent agenda and place it elsewhere on the agenda for approval or, well, for approval? Seeing none from everybody I can see on screen. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? At 7:03 on August 6th, the motion passes unanimously. Next on the agenda is governing board statements. We will, as we have been doing, go in roll call order. Dr. Skidmore, that would be you if your pup will allow.
Yes, I'm sorry about that.
No, that's okay.
It's a very brief comment. I just want to make, I want to thank UPC, United Parent Council. And delivery of supplies to our school in need.
Is that it? Thank you, Dr. Skidmore. Mrs. Matura?
I just wanted to give a big shout out. There's so many people that have made the start to this school year happen. There's so many people behind the scenes that there are people answering the phone calls, trying to onboard students, trying to get all of these Google Classroom set up. There's all the teachers who have learned this whole new way of teaching who are teaching my daughter now. And the teachers are there, and all these parents are now helping their kids and doing technology that they never wanted to learn. So it's been such a big team effort, and I know there's been some hiccups along the way, and we always have hiccups at the beginning of the school year. So if we take it in stride, everyone's working hard together to try to get everything taken care of. And I've seen some really positive remarks out there. I know in my house, it's been great. My daughter really enjoyed seeing her friends back online, seeing their faces, seeing the teacher. She was able to get in her classroom, move over to her pull-out classroom, get back. So it was a really successful day, and she even wanted to go back for some more one-on-one afternoon things this afternoon and do a little extra learning. So it's been great in my household. I'm hoping that lots of people had my same experience, and I'm hoping that it continues to move smoothly and continue along the way. So thank you to everyone who made it possible.
Thank you, Mrs. Matura. Mrs. Case?
I just want to thank everyone for persevering through unique times and being willing to do hard things that have never been done before. And I think it's being successful. And I just want to thank everyone for parents, students, teachers, staff, everyone who works behind the scenes and in the public. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Case. Mrs. Bacon?
Yeah, thanks, Mrs. Greenberg. So our staff pulled off a gargantuan feat yesterday. We started school on time and online, and it was a Herculean effort. And I know that many of our employees worked long hours, both on contract and off contract, to make that happen. I'm just so humbled and proud and amazed to be part of an organization where the teachers and every employee gives everything they have to making the experiences of students positive. I saw a meme on Instagram yesterday that I thought sums up what happened yesterday, and it said every single teacher started their first year of teaching again. So our new graduates, our 40-year veterans, yesterday felt like it was the first day of the first year of teaching, because this is a totally different experience. So I want to thank all of them, all of our teachers, for the work that they did, and every employee. Our ESPs were doing vital support tasks yesterday. And I think sometimes we forget about those employees, and I want to recognize what they did to make the first day of school amazing. And frankly, what they do every single school day to make schools work. It couldn't be done without them. I suspect that front offices were kind of emergency triage centers yesterday during the day. With staff, our support staff and principals putting out fires, drying up tears, calming nerves, and that was probably from both parents and staff. And I want to thank them for what they did. Our principals, again, how can you, I don't even know the words to express how grateful I am for the work that you do and the support you provided as we're starting this school year. And I know, like Susan said, like Mrs. Matura said, there are glitches, and there always will be on the first day. But what I'd really like to see, and I hope we can do, is really talk with our employees about what they need to make this work, because this is different. And let's talk with them about what they want, and then let's make it happen so that they get what they want and get what they need to make this experience as positive for them as it is for the students. So, employees, thank you. To be honest, you pulled off a miracle, and I am very grateful for that.
Thank you, Mrs. Bacon. I don't think I could say it any better, but I will add my thanks to everybody, because we all went back to school yesterday here in this district, and that included our parents, certainly. And I saw an enormous outpouring of, shall we say, amazing thumbs up comments from most people that I saw on social media and just texts I got, etc. That really pointed to how, I don't want to say necessarily smoothly, because obviously, yes, there were glitches, but just how joyous the first day was, that how their student just fell right into what the flow of the class. And, parent A is like, I heard giggling behind the door. Parent B, I saw, my ninth grader is going on a scavenger hunt in the house. How creative, how amazing. I certainly saw some comments where there were concerns, and then immediately like, oh my gosh, great customer service. You just got back to me, so my problem's resolved. So I do want to thank everybody. Our employees are spectacular, and we could not do this without each and every one of you. Whether you are involved in learning or supporting learning, you are involved in learning. And I also want to thank all of our parents, because we know that much of this is falling on your shoulders in terms of supporting your students, more so now than, probably any other time, with the possible exception of fourth quarter. So really, we are all in this together. We are PV strong. And I'm looking forward to, well, we now have 2 days under our belt to the next 178, however that works for us. And with that, we will move on to superintendent's comments. Dr. Welsh.
Sure. Thank you, President Greenberg. I'd like to, of course, welcome everybody who's with us virtually to our first virtual regular board meeting of the year. Wanted to point out that in addition to being able to view and listen to the meeting via WebEx, we are also streaming live on YouTube, and that's a somewhat new feature for us. So if you go to youtube.com/pvschools, community members can watch live or can view the meeting at a later date if that's convenient for them. I'd like to echo a lot of the comments that I think you have shared already this evening. And, while we opened virtually yesterday, Cabinet and I, as we traditionally do on the first day, went and visited each of the campuses, make sure things are running smoothly, check in and help out where we can. And I'm also pleased to share it was a successful day. We had solid levels of attendance and participation from our students. Was very impressed with that. Our technology team and our school office staff, as was noted earlier, we're helping families and students connect with those online classrooms and troubleshooting some common technology challenges. In addition, we still had our meal service going. We served 433 students yesterday. That's because that's breakfast and lunch for 2 days. That's actually 1,732 meals on that first day. And again, while staff have the flexibility to work remotely, we noted that many chose to work on site just to better facilitate troubleshooting some of those technical challenges and collaborating with peers and problem solving how best to tackle some of the new challenges that online teaching brings. Both teachers and students were energized and able to interact with each other. I was really impressed. Got to see some of our youngest learners in pre-K and kindergarten and first grade successfully interacting and learning with their teachers via Google Meet. And I will also mention that it's worth noting that there was very consistent practices regarding masks and social distancing. So I'm glad that for those who did choose to be on site, that they were staying safe. I know there's been some technical issues with some of our students trying to connect with PV Online, which we are addressing. We provided an update to families today who have K-8 children who were impacted by that yesterday and today, and the staff at PV Online have been working tirelessly to ensure that all the components for students are in place. They have been responding to an enormous volume of questions. As you might imagine, we had a significant influx of students to PV Online given COVID-19, and they have been working with families as hundreds of families have been switching back and forth between PV Connect and PV Online, making sure they picked the option that was best for them. Some of the challenges we ran into, we had hundreds of families that didn't have an email address. And so they were not getting communications. And so we've had to update records as well. And so today we actually brought in some additional staff from other schools and departments to help out. And we have updated our communications, and that's on our PV Online webpage as well for those who might be looking for that. Couple of other nice kudos to start the school year. I'd like to congratulate members of Pinnacle High School's girls golf team who were individually invited to the 2020 High School Golf National Invitational Tournament to represent the state of Arizona. And those student athletes won the third and final round on Wednesday at Pinehurst, North Carolina. And so congratulations to national champions girls golf participants there. And that golf team, of course, is coached by Charlie Wild. I'd also like to congratulate Missy Martin, now Dr. Missy Martin, for successfully defending her dissertation last week and earning her doctorate degree in educational leadership from University of Phoenix. And lastly, I'd like to recognize Dr. Janice Mack, who was selected as the Arizona representative for the National Association of State Boards of Education Whole Child Policy Study Group. Members of this group will deepen the content experience of state board members to lead whole child policymaking in the wake of COVID-19. And this project advances NASB's focus on developing equitable education systems that provide safe, healthy, supportive learning environments where all students can thrive and achieve academic excellence. And that concludes my comments here for our first board meeting after our first day of school this year.
Thank you very much, Dr. Welsh. First item on our approval agenda is consideration approval of superintendent's goals and objectives for 2020-2021. So I will throw it right back to you.
Right on. All right. Thank you again, President Greenberg. Let me pull this up just so everybody else can see as well. All right, so just for consideration here this evening, and I know obviously we've been in communication and I've shared these with you previous. I know we've had some discussions throughout the last couple of months in terms of my goals for this year. Obviously, it is a little bit of a unique year given that we are starting online and dealing with the ramifications of COVID-19. Have four major goals that I want to focus on and some specific objectives in each of those areas. That first goal is really focused around COVID-19. So developing communicating plans for reopening of schools during this pandemic, including our contingency plans. So specifically, developing and communicating our district plan for reopening to families and staff and implementing those steps in the plan and preparing for and initiating a return to in-person instruction. We are looking forward to the date where we can do that, of course. Second objective under that is to develop and implement a plan to provide social emotional support just upon reopening and throughout the 2020 school year. And those efforts are, of course, already underway as we started yesterday. Third objective under that goal is to monitor those additional costs due to COVID-19 and the potential short and long-term impacts of the state budget and make budget adjustments as needed and plans for the upcoming fiscal 22 year. And then finally, under that goal, to develop and implement learning options, curriculum resources, professional development to support our online and our in-person teaching and learning. For my second goal, in collaboration with stakeholders, complete the development of the district strategic plan. Obviously, last spring, we were well on our way through that work and that process. Due to COVID-19, we suspended that, but we will restart that work and finish that this year. So under that goal, some specific objectives. One is exactly so in alignment with the data and feedback already provided, develop those specific action steps within the strategic plan, and also addressing equity and cultural competency. This was something that I know was already emerging as a focus for us. And given some of the recent developments, when you think about the George Floyd incident and much of what's going on right now with Black Lives Matters, we felt like this was a really important component to make sure that we addressed. Second objective is to present that renewed strategic plan to the board here for approval and begin communication, implementation of those goals, objectives, and action steps. And then finally, we know that based on that plan, that may need to shift some of the ways that we operate. And so analyze the current alignment of our organizational chart and responsibilities to the needs of the plan and make adjustments as required. Also putting a focus on increasing opportunities for resource enhancement. For my third goal, it's always a focus, which is, of course, academic achievement, focusing on our learning. And so continuing to make improvements in student achievement, first objective under there, to develop a professional development implementation plan for our instructional coaching, which is new this year at K-6 and our middle schools for our instructional coaches and our administrators. For the second objective, to develop a common process for recommending students in those transition years between elementary school to middle school and middle school to high school, focusing primarily on math and English language arts, but not necessarily limited to those areas. For the third objective, analyzing our instructional minutes within core areas in K-8. This was something just in my first year and in looking at our schedules that we collaboratively working with Cabinet felt was an area of focus Obviously, a little bit different right now that we are in the PV Connect model, but once we get back to that in-person learning phase, sure that we have some consistency there and that we're providing students with the amount of time that they need to be successful in each of those content areas, and then provide recommendations to schools so that we can implement that for the upcoming 21-22 school year. And then last one under this goal, something that we started last year and to continue is just to continue to provide that targeted support to increase student achievement at our underperforming schools. And I'll just mention, just so everybody's aware, of course, we didn't have AZ Merit last year, so we don't have any updated test results or letter grades. Those carry over from the previous year. So continuing to work with those same schools that we started to work with last school year. And then finally, ensure ongoing communication and collaboration with our staff and our community, and some specific objectives under there. Improving the consistency of practices and the availability of information regarding school site to increase parent engagement. Again, this was an observation in my first year, just noting that there's some variation there. It's probably been a little while since we've put some focus into how site councils operate at each of our schools. And so just renewing that focus and making sure that we have some consistency and that parents know how they can engage with the site councils and really help with some of the decision making that's going on at their schools. Second objective, provide ongoing updates to the community regarding projects being completed through bond and DAA funds to support our students and increase our fiscal transparency. Third objective, ensure our adherence to the committee structures for development and approval of significant items district-wide, and examine existing membership on standing committees as needed. Making sure that we continue with that PV way and that continues to be how we operate. And, again, with last year being my first year in the district and moving forward, if we do have some committees where perhaps it's been a while since we've looked at the membership and re-upped on that, we'll take a look at that and, perhaps just get some new opportunities for some additional voices in some of those committees. And then lastly, as opportunities present, demonstrate advocacy within the state for flexibility and funding for school districts. And I think that goes without saying. Obviously, with some of the unique circumstances of this year, we have ample opportunities to make that happen. So those are my goals and objectives as outlined at this point. I welcome any comments, thoughts, or feedback at this point.
So it is Mrs. Matura.
I appreciate the our goal 4A with the site council, because I think that is definitely something that every year UPC, whenever we bring up site council again, it's always like a reminder, like, oh, and it's a relearning experience, and I feel that that is lost on a lot of it's a big part of involving the community and involving the parents, and so I appreciate that that will be looked at so across the board, and then parents will know as they move on from school to school what that looks like. They'll be able to talk to peers at other schools and just have an awareness about it. So I appreciate that that is part of your goals for this year.
Thank you, Mrs. Mature. Does anybody else have? I'm not seeing anybody's hand up. Okay, I just want to make one comment, and Dr. Welsh and I have sort of discussed this, at least via email. When I was reading through these and I sent Dr. Welsh some comments, thank you, yes, that was exactly where I was going, was goal 3.
I was reading your mind.
Yes, you were. One of the points I wanted to make, and it's not that I'm against what we have here. I'm very much for what we have here, but I think we're looking at things. I realize these are goals for this current school year. It's not coming anymore, this current school year. But I also, had some, I don't want to say concerns necessarily, but just in looking at what's here, I think, individually, these are great objectives, but I'm having a harder time quantifying how the individual objectives support a longer term goal in terms of student achievement. So Dr. Welsh and I talked, well, again, emailed about back and forth about that. And so, I just wanted to point that out. It's like, I do like these, but and yes, we're looking at short term, but I think, in an overall scheme of things, as well as, overlaying the fact that we are back into strategic planning, I just want to make sure that what we achieve with these really does point towards increased student achievement, as opposed, in terms, it's not just implementing something like developing a plan, it's where that plan takes us to increase student achievement.
Yep, absolutely.
So, Mrs. Bacon?
Thanks. First, thank you for the goals. I think they adequately reflect the information that we talked about in previous discussions. The one thing that I'm most interested in, I think, is a critical component to this school year is collaboration and communication. I think we can't communicate too much given the things that are happening. And so I think that goal 4 is one of the most important things that we have to work on this year. We have to maintain, I think, what Mrs. Greenberg was referring to as the PV way, or someone said that. And that is, in fact, what we have to maintain, build, maintain, establish, all of those things. That is a hallmark of PV schools, and it just cannot be lost. So that would be my only thoughts and feedback around the goals that you've put forward.
Thank you, Mrs. Bacon. I absolutely agree with that. Does anybody else have anything else? Dr. Skidmore.
Mrs. Greenberg, to speak to your goal number 3, I believe that the whole problem with student achievement and whether or not it works or not is the fact that we have been reluctant to look at cohorts over time. And we have been reluctant to do that because every 2 or 3 years, the state has changed the test. And until we can get to the point where one kid starts in the 1st grade and goes through the 12th and matriculates through the 12th grade, we are not going to have good data. So it would be incumbent upon us, I would think, for PV to figure out a way how to track student achievement over a cohort period. So K-12 or 112, I don't care. But that's the most important thing. You cannot mix apples and oranges when you're looking at student achievement.
Thank you, Dr. Skidmore. Dr. Welsh, you want to?
I wholeheartedly agree. I mean, that's definitely one of the challenges. And yeah, I mean, kind of to that point, I know we already know there are changes on the horizon with some of the assessments planned at the state level, not for this year, but for next year. I mean, yep, makes sense. That's definitely a challenge, but there are ways that we can, track that and hopefully be able to bridge some of those changes in assessments to be able to track that progress longitudinally.
I mean, I'd also just like to comment, and it is the yin and yang of student achievement and what we measure. But unfortunately, what we measure are certain parameters, certain standards. But unfortunately, it does not allow us to look at student achievement in terms of, has somebody performed well? They're a theater buff and they're performing, or they're in art and they're an incredible artist, or ceramicist or whatever. And these metrics don't allow us to measure that kind of student achievement. And I know it's a discussion we have all the time when we talk about student achievement, but to me, all of those things are absolutely critical. And I find it, once again, unfortunate we aren't able to include those in terms of the metrics that the state uses to measure student achievement. So just wanted to throw that back in too. Does anybody else have anything else? Or I'm sorry, did I ask for a motion on this already? I think so. Dr. Skidmore, may we have a motion to approve? Did I just talk over you for that?
I said so move.
Thank you. All right, may we have a roll call vote, Ms. Chisholm?
Dr. Skidmore,
Aye.
Mrs. Matura,
Aye.
Mrs. Greenberg,
Aye.
Mrs. Case,
Aye.
Mrs. Bacon.
Aye.
Thank you very much. It's 7:30 p.m. on August 6th. We have a unanimous vote to approve Dr. Welsh's goals and objectives for this school year. Thank you very much. Next on the agenda is consideration and approval of board norms. I don't know, were those going to go up or are we just going to? I know they are attached to the agenda.
Hang on, Ms. Greenberg, we can get them up.
Well, I guess I should ask, does any member of the board feel the need to see these again?
No.
Okay.
I don't feel the need, but maybe our audience would like to see them.
That would
Given
be
that
fine.
this is the most audience we've ever had talking about board norms. Do they
This
even
is
know we do
true.
it?
Okay, so this is for the 100 of you who have maybe not seen these yet, and once Dr. Welsh gets them up. Just so you know, we have been, this board collaborated on these norms. I don't know how, 5 to 7 years ago, I will say. And we revisit them every year in our board retreat, which we held at the end of January this year, and reviewed them for, how we felt we were supporting them individually and as a board. And we have not revised them a great deal because we feel they are very strong and they reflect our values as a board.
And Mrs. Greenberg, you said the end of January.
Did I say January? I meant
You
June.
did. You meant June. Yeah. I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you very much.
We didn't wait 6 months to bring them up.
No, we did not. And I'm sorry, I'm looking at this screen, I'm looking at my iPad, I'm looking over here. So I'm probably should have a calendar on the wall. I will put that on for the next meeting. But these are our norms and they speak to how we conduct ourselves individually and as a board in leading this district.
And Mrs. Greenberg,
Yes.
if I could just make a statement about it, I felt it was very helpful when I came on board as a new board member, being able to look and see that this is how we treat each other, this is what's expected, this is how we behave as a board. And I really appreciated that that was something in writing and I could look at it and say, how nice that this is, how we've all agreed that this is how we will act on this board. And I really appreciate that we hold to it. And I think it's a really important document that going forward, it just it allows new people to join the board and continue with our norms and what our expectations are to being on the board of Pvusd. So I appreciate that this is in writing and part of our plan.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Matura. Does anybody else have any comments? Seeing none, Dr. Skidmore, may I have a motion to approve?
So move.
Thank you very much. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Dr. Skidmore, Mrs. Matura,
Aye.
Mrs. Greenberg,
Aye.
Mrs. Case,
Aye.
Mrs. Bacon.
Aye.
Thank you very much. At 7:34 on August 6th, we have unanimous approval of our board norms. So next on the agenda is consideration and approval of public health benchmarks for the safe return to in-person teacher-led classroom instruction. And again, I will turn it over to Dr. Welsh.
All right. Thank you once again, President Greenberg. And in alignment with Governor Ducey's most recent executive order, I'd like to share our recommendations for public health benchmarks to be met to allow for in-person learning to resume. So a little bit of background just so that everybody is aware. As you know, July 3rd, Governor Ducey issued Executive Order 2020-51 entitled Arizona Open for Learning. And this order contained a number of specific requirements for school districts. Among these, it required that each district consider recommendations and guidance from county health officials, community needs, and available resources to determine when in-person learning can safely be made available. It also mandated that the Arizona Department of Health Services develop public health benchmarks for that safe return to in-person, teacher-led classroom instruction by tomorrow, and they actually came out with those guidelines this afternoon. Districts were charged with considering these recommendations and guidance from county health officials, community needs, and available resources to make that determination on when in-person learning could be made available. And this is really to accomplish that rather than selecting a random date on the calendar in the hopes that the level of spread of COVID-19 has reached manageable levels, that data-driven decisions in local context would drive when it's safe to return to in-person learning. This approach mirrors that of some other states who also announced statewide criteria to be met in each county before schools can open for in-person instruction. And so as part of our process, we researched recommendations by medical professionals, practices in other states, and recommendations from our local health agencies. And so a couple of those I want to share just as we began our work. It was not too long ago, state of California, not too far away, announced its framework for reopening in-person learning. In it, they indicated that the schools and the school district could not reopen for in-person learning if they are located in a health jurisdiction that is, they can only open if they've not been on the county monitoring list within the last 14 days. And so for them to remain off that county monitoring list, you can see the criteria that needs to be met. They included some data points based on a 14-day average of the rates of cases, new cases of COVID-19, as well as testing positivity. And then because it is tied to some other things, it's not just specific to education. They also included some metrics regarding increases in hospitalizations and then ICU bed use and ventilators that were available. In New York, they kept it pretty straight and simple. On the 13th, Governor Cuomo announced a data-driven guidance for reopening of schools, and theirs was pretty simple. It was a 14-day average of testing positivity, the percent of tests that come back positive, and that had to be at 5% or lower for a period of time before the schools could open. So some local context here in Arizona, the Maricopa County Department of Public Health indicated a few weeks ago on July 9th that some students in physical buildings and some students in distance learning should only occur if there's minimal to moderate spread, which from the medical community is generally defined as having testing positivity between 5 and 10%, and that for all students to return to an in-person learning experience, that could only happen if there was no to minimal spread, which is generally defined as being below that 5% threshold. So you see that 5% kind of coming up as a theme there. Additionally, the Arizona School Boards Association sent a letter to Governor Ducey again a few weeks ago requesting some criteria be in place before schools could reopen. That was, again, a downward trajectory of case rate for 28 days, basically a month, a 28-day decrease in testing positivity while maintaining test volume, and making sure that that testing positivity was below 15%, so a higher threshold there, for at least 14 days, and a median test turnaround time of less than 3 days. I do want to point out that based upon this criteria at the state level, we have actually already seen a 28-day downward trajectory in rates and testing positivity. However, the metrics for testing positivity and for case rates and testing positivity, but the threshold for the test volume and the turnaround have not yet been met. There was also a group, the Coalition for Common Sense, that shared some recommendations with Governor Ducey. That was a group of physicians, which included some pediatricians and medical experts, and consisting of some folks both within the PV schools and the Scottsdale community, and some folks nationally, shared an open letter with the governor, really with the intent to help drive the conversation about metrics and opening in the hopes that the governor's office and the Arizona Department of Health Services would issue metrics for reopening, which we know that has now happened. So that you can see, again, some similarities to some of the metrics we've already shared. You see that percent positivity below 5%, which continues to be a theme, that need for rapid turnaround of results, which again drives contact tracing. You cannot accomplish effective contact tracing if you don't have timely test results, because by that point, you don't know who you've been in contact with a week later, 2 weeks later. Again, you can see some similarities, consistent downward trajectory of cases, and then some criteria talking about making sure that patients can be treated without crisis surge capacity, and then PPE supplies and guidelines for educators. So little background, here's where we are today as a state. These are some 7-day average rates for the state of Arizona and some testing positivity and case rates within Maricopa. Currently, we have a 7-day testing positivity rate across the state of 16.56%. That is 5th highest in the country right now, behind just Mississippi, Nevada, Alabama, and Florida. And our 7-day case rate per 100,000 population is at 27.3. Based on advice from experts, it does seem to make more sense to track data at a more local level, since the state overall is not necessarily representative of what's happening here in our local context, obviously. So looking specifically at Maricopa County, we don't currently have a publicly available source that has been tracking that data that's you can go to a website and click on. Just tracking the data from the 3rd, and you can see the asterisk there. The county has a testing positivity rate of 13.5%, still very much higher than that 5% that you saw on a number of the slides earlier. And publicly available data for the rate of cases per 100,000 puts Maricopa at a 14-day average of 32 per 100,000. I do want to share on a call earlier with Dr. Sonnenschein from the Maricopa County Department of Public Health, and on their later today, they indicated they are going to be providing support to help districts and developing additional data reporting dashboards that will have 14-day averages for percent positivity by zip code, by city, and by school district, which is fantastic. So we will be able to drive down to data for what's within our boundaries using that. They are also planning on reporting those 14-day averages for case rates at the county level. They may explore looking at that at more granular levels, just depending upon their capacity to complete that work. So our process, anticipating that executive order from the governor, we began to work quickly to review some available recommendations and information that was out there, as well as to consult with medical experts to inform developing recommendations for the safe return to in-person learning. Our North Valley Education Consortium, or NEVIC group, discussed collaboration on school reopening criteria back on the 23rd. And following that, many of us participated in a meeting with Scottsdale. So the acronyms, the alphabet soup you see here, you have Scottsdale, PV, you have Cave Creek, and you have Deer Valley all collaborating. In that meeting, we included some of the superintendents, myself as well, medical experts, our lead nurses were part of that, as well as members of our community. Just this past week on the 4th, which is just 2 days ago, our COVID-19 response team, or CRT, discussed and reviewed draft recommendations for reopening criteria. And just this morning, as I alluded to earlier, we met with Dr. Sonnenschein and reviewed our draft recommendations, as well as got a little bit of a preview for what was released later by the state. So at 3 o'clock today, hot off the presses, the Arizona Department of Health Services released their reopening criteria. And again, you see some common themes through all of this. I was really, when I saw the criteria that were developed by the state, it really showed that we were on the right track in terms of the things that we were looking at. So you can see from the data provided, it's kind of like a red, yellow, green light, like a traffic sign. So red, it'd be based on the recommendations from Arizona Department of Health Services. There are 3 metrics there, including cases, percent positivity, and COVID-like illness. I believe it was a little fuzzy, still trying to suss that one out. But I believe that refers to the percent of cases coming into hospitals that are presenting COVID-like symptoms. So I'm going to focus on those first 2 because I know those are ones we're all a little more familiar with. So you could see some numbers there in terms of case rate. Their recommendations were if cases were above 100 per 100,000 population, and if the percent positivity was over 10%, then we would be at a red light. It means everything needs to be virtual. There is not any opportunities for in-person learning, including hybrid or even just some special groups of students coming on campus. For moderate spread, and I'll get to some more information in that in a minute, you can see that would be where you might be in that 10 to 100 cases per 100,000. That percent positivity between that 5 and 10%, again, very similar to what Maricopa County had shared just a few weeks ago. And then for us to be in that green category, to be able to go back to a fully in-person learning format, the recommendations from Arizona Department of Health Services are that cases are at a rate of less than 10 per 100,000, and that percent positivity was below 5%. So again, you see a lot of commonality in the metrics that were being shared. One other piece that was shared by the Arizona Department of Health Services was that middle ground, that yellow light. And so the thinking from the Arizona Department of Health Services is that you'd have to get down to that green before you would start with fully in-person learning. But you might get to a point in that yellow where if things are moving in a downward trend and that percent positivity is right in that middle ground for that category at 7%, you may begin to do perhaps some hybrid learning or have some students return for learning if there are students perhaps with some specific needs that could be best addressed in a face-to-face setting. So based upon all of these inputs, that's a lot of data, a lot of stuff there. We are proposing the following criteria to determine when in-person learning can resume here in Pvusd. And so again, to help kind of make it easier to understand, I'm making this analogy to a traffic signal, red, yellow, green. And again, focusing on our local context, our metrics would be based on Maricopa County, or again, if we do have that district level data being provided by the county, then we would look at that district level data. So as shown at the bottom of my slide, I'm going to start with green light and work my way up here. So for that green light for us to return, we are recommending 14-day averages for testing positivity that are below 5%, and that we are in alignment with the recommendations from Arizona Department of Health Services below the rate of 10 cases per 100,000 population. And this requirement would need to be met for 14 days before we would be able to resume with in-person learning. So just like a traffic light, we can't go until that light turns green. Additionally, I want to mention that we would also be monitoring that testing turnaround to make sure that we are keeping within that 1 to 3 day, and I think 3 is probably stretching it, to make sure that we are able to maintain contact tracing and that testing is truly still meeting demand. Our traffic light would turn yellow, just like if you're driving on light turns yellow, you better use caution. If the 14-day averages for testing positivity go above 5% but are remaining below 10%, and those cases per 100,000 are between 10 and 50, that would put us in a yellow light situation. We would still be able to remain in person with learning, but we would have to proceed with caution and warn that red light may be coming up. That light may be going from yellow to red. A red traffic light, just like if you're driving your car, would cause us to stop, and we would move from in-person learning back to online learning models, our PV Connect and our PV Online. That red traffic light would occur if those 14-day averages for testing positivity rose above 10%, or if our cases per 100,000 rose above 50. I also want to mention on those that when you look at those criteria, while we did not include specific criteria like hospitalizations, those criteria are effectively a proxy for some of those other metrics, because if you have a low testing positivity rate and you have low rates of cases per population, your hospital utilization is going to follow that pattern as well. So I want to talk a little bit about what that means in terms of that reopening process. So working with the Maricopa County Department of Public Health, we would continue to monitor that local county and school district data and inform our families regarding those trends as we approach getting into that yellow and then green light. Once that reopening criteria has been met for 14 days, we'll establish a transition period to allow for the necessary planning to switch back to in-person learning options. And depending upon the timing, we may even try to tie that date for the return to in-person learning to a natural breakpoint in the calendar. We also want to make sure that we are allowing time for schools to work with families who may still wish to remain in the PV Connect model, so that we can make adjustments accordingly based upon that level of interest at that time. And then I want to reiterate that when in-person learning resumes, a green light does not mean that all things return to pre-COVID normal. As we know with COVID, there really isn't a normal right now. And so as outlined in our reopening plan, our expectations regarding wearing masks, maintaining distancing, and additional cleaning procedures, and all of the other safety and health precautions that we have in place would remain in place once in-person learning is permitted. And I do want to say that, while our plan and our standard operating procedures do include the procedures for handling reported and suspected cases of COVID-19 and exposure to COVID-19, we will continue to work with the Maricopa County Department of Public Health, who just this morning in our call has indicated that they will be helping to provide additional clarity for schools and families regarding those expectations and notifications for contact tracing. So I know that is a lot of information and a lot of data. So I will pause there for questions and discussion, and I'll probably just slide right back here to that stoplight, because I think that's probably the most salient piece of information.
Thank you very much, Dr. Welsh, for that incredibly informative presentation. And I'm just going to throw it open. I see Mrs. Case has her hand up.
Thank you. I just want to say that I appreciate us going by metrics as opposed to setting a date that can come and go. And I appreciate the fact that our community can be part of making it happen. And I think that we need to continue to teach the kids, you can help our schools open. The parents can help our schools open, the teachers, the being careful, wearing masks out in public,
Yes.
all of those things. This is a community. Let's get back together in school full time, which is our goal.
Right.
But let's have everybody help. And I think that's really important, that we're not setting an arbitrary date. We're using metrics, which I think are wise. And these are not things that we have come up with. These are the professionals doing these metrics who have watched other places around the country who might be 2 months ahead of where we are. And the things like this. I mean, COVID is changing all the time, but we've learned some things along the way. So there's a lot of people taking a lot of information to come up with these ideas. And I appreciate the time and effort that was spent coming up with these ideas. I think they're very solid. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Case. Does anybody else? Dr. Skidmore?
I would just like to make a comment about green light. As I have learned some new terminology, there's such a thing with restaurants and hotels as soft openings, like you just go full bore over, once you got the green light. And I think that we've seen that mistake in when we open too quickly, particularly some of the bars and entertainment centers that cater to the younger people. And I would urge that if we get to the green light, that we take baby steps and we take a certain amount of kids, like pre-K through 3, and give that a try. And then after 2 weeks, if that works okay, then we take 4, 5, 6, etc. But I would hope that we would not just jump in, and when we get that green light, open every door in every classroom and every age group. And that's the only I think the plan is wonderful. I'm so delighted, as Mrs. Case said, that we have metrics. And thank you very much.
If I may, just to follow up on that, yeah, Dr. Skidmore, I think that is very astute, and I think in that yellow light phase as you're getting to that green, or, maybe even as we're in that green and we're planning for everybody to come back. I know those are some things that we've had at least some initial discussions about. Makes a lot of sense. There's definitely some research out there that supports that our younger students, at least based on the knowledge we have right now, tend to be less likely to be spreaders of that than some of our older students above the age of 10. So I think that makes a lot of sense.
Mrs. Matura?
Yes, a couple of things. One, I appreciate that the metrics that are going to be put, the dashboard that the state is going to put together will allow the community to access this dashboard. And I think we should have that somewhere on our website, an easy link to it. So people can continue to follow and see where we're at and see when we're getting close and really help things along. And so I appreciate that that data is going to be out there for everyone to see all the time. So I think that's really helpful. People can get excited and ready. I know that there are people who feel like 5% is just forever away and it's never going to happen, and feeling that you're always going to be a high percentage because people test when they are sick and not when they're feeling well. And I was listening to the press conference from yesterday from the Maricopa County, and they were explaining the 5% positivity rate, saying it's reasonable, and it indicates that there actually is enough testing out there, that enough people are getting tests beyond just the ones who are, we're not rationing tests just to those who are feeling really ill, that people are starting to test because they want to go somewhere and they want to feel confident that they're not going to expose someone else. And so right now that doesn't seem possible because it's not how we are able to do testing in our state, but there are other states who are doing that. And I was looking at New York City, and New York City back in April had a rate over 70% positivity rate. And so if they were, if you're over 70% and you're looking, well, one day we'll open schools when we're under 5%, those people are thinking that will never, ever, ever, ever happen. And yet, just a few days ago, this week, they are at 1.2% positivity in New York City. So take heart. It may look like we're so high right now, but we have been coming down, and other states have been able to get there. And so it is a reasonable metric. It's, it's something that the healthcare providers are saying that this means there's available testing. It means people are taking advantage of that. And so, that I just wanted to point that out because I know that that's a scary number to a lot of people who think that means never. And it really doesn't mean never. It just means we have to be vigilant. So just wanted to mention that.
Thank you, Mrs. Matura. Mrs. Bacon, I see you've unmuted, so I will pass it over to you.
Thank you. I have a few things. I think the first thing that occurs to me is if we're using a traffic light analogy, when you're at a red light, you don't go when there's a yellow light, you wait for a green light. So you go from green to yellow to red, not red to yellow to green. So I would like to see us use green as the start point, not yellow. Because I think you start in yellow and you have, I think, just a higher percentage or a higher probability that you're going to go to red. So that would be one thing that I would think of when I see yellow as that, okay, we're back and things are creeping up and things are getting a little bit more difficult. Now we're going to be in yellow. I don't see it as from red down to green. I see it as a green, utilizing yellow as a way back up to red. And hopefully we'll never have to do that. I mean, hopefully we're in a situation where we're not going to have to do that. One of the things that I looked at today on the dashboard that the Arizona Department of Health put out, the data that they're citing, the last available data ends on July 19th. That was almost 3 weeks ago. So there's going to be a significant lag, or do they see this improving, that they're going to be able to get the data out there more quickly?
Yeah, I can speak a little to that. Yeah, I think There's still going to be a lag in reporting, perhaps less so now that again, I'll knock on wood because it does appear that the backlog of tests is finally subsiding. So that should speed up that time frame. But I know in the conversation that we had with Dr. Sonnenschein this morning, there's still always going to be a little bit of a lag because even if those results are coming in, for them to be able to get them in the right places, it's not necessarily live time. So if you took a test on a Monday, that data may not show up in that visualization by Thursday or Friday. There's still a delay. So I think that's important to recognize that as they're calculating those averages, it is always going to be a little bit behind the current date.
And I mean, how far? Hopefully not 3 weeks.
I hope not either, but I can't say that I can speak with expertise on that matter.
I have the using the data dashboard page from their report today. And it says that they will, the dashboard will be updated every Thursday for the data covering the 2-week period ending 12 days earlier. So on today's dashboard, it would cover the time period between 7/12 to 7/18 and 7/19 to 7/25. And then next week's will go 7/19 to 7/25 and 7/26 to 8/1. So that's how
what was visible on there today was only
sure
the 19th.
Right.
But this may be their plan going forward. Hopefully they meet that,
Well,
but that is their intent.
Yeah, and remember, there's 2 different entities. So you have Arizona Department of, I always get my acronyms confused. Arizona, you have the state level, and then you have Maricopa County. So Maricopa County is going to have their own dashboard that I think is going to be more timely and, like I said before, drill down further to that zip code, city, and district level, whereas the state dashboard, I saw that information today too at the state level, and I was thankful for the information that the county has providing because I think it's going to be a lot more robust than that at the state level.
The other thing that I wanted to ask about was if you could go to the slide where we're talking about reopening and what that would look like. So the one thing that I have significant concerns about is the 2-week transition period. I do not feel that's enough time. I think I believe that we have a lot of open ESP positions and probably can't fill them in a 2-week period. That's number one. Number two, I don't think that is a significant amount of time to turn around these decisions that families have to make. You know, in some of our communities, when you send a survey out, you get a reply from most parents within 48 hours. In some of our communities, you're calling parents for days to try to reach them to get what their decision is. So I think we have to be mindful of the situations in every single one of our communities and be thoughtful about how much time we give to transition to open again. So that's number one. Number two, in that 2-week transition that I'd like to see longer, is I really believe we have to give our staff some professional time to open classrooms. We want to open classrooms in a way that students are used to, in a way that families are used to. I think it's completely unreasonable to expect our teachers to teach all day long and then stop teaching and shift to setting up their classroom, doing bulletin boards, making nameplates, doing lesson plans for in-person learning. That's not the same thing as virtual learning. Those lesson plans look different. And so I would love to see us build in professional time for our teachers to make that transition, and our other staff as well, all of our staff. I don't know whether that's 2 days off when students don't go to school or whether that's 5 half days. So employees have a half day to take care of the things that they need to get done. But somehow we have to give our professionals the respect for the professionals that they are and not ask them to work for nothing. So that is another thing that I'm thinking of. And I am concerned about that turnaround. I guess my final comment is, well, final for now. Y'all know me, I'll probably have more. that I can't see us opening after Labor Day. That's only a few weeks away. So if we're going to have to be 2 weeks at a certain level and we're not even near that level right now, I wonder, should we give our families a little bit more heads up of what we're going to be doing? And we probably won't be going back the day after Labor Day. So that's the other thing that I want us to kind of talk a little bit about tonight and get some feedback around. Thank you.
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump in on there. I mean, I think the part of the point of what we're discussing is what we are doing is replacing that potential after Labor Day opening. I mean, we voted on that at the end of June. I've got my dates right this time. At the end of June, and even then it was at the earliest. It was never a hard and fast date. And I think in what we are looking at here is, I think what we are looking at here is pretty much saying we will not be opening then. We aren't going to hit these metrics if we're at a 13.6%, if I got that right, positivity rate in Maricopa County right now. There's no way that's heading down to 5% within 2 weeks and then add on a minimum of 2 weeks and we're already at Labor Day. So I think what we're doing here tonight is, you know, at the very least, informing our families that no, we will not be heading back into our schools after the Labor Day weekend because it's not safe. So,
And I agree, Anne, but I think we have to be very specific about the way we communicate that.
yes.
Yeah, just saying we need to meet these metrics to go back isn't enough. I think we have to say we're not going to meet these metrics unless there's some miraculous thing happen, which there won't be. And we're not going back after Labor Day. And I just want, again, when we go back to that, talking about Dr. Welsh's goals, the communication is key. We've got to be very clear and very not education speak. Very plain people speak. Let's just say what it is and get it out there so that people understand.
And I absolutely agree. I mean, I think there are many other districts right now that are putting out, we're not going back till the end of first quarter types of deadlines. And we are basically saying we don't even know if that's when we're heading back because we are tying it to these metrics. So I agree. I mean, I think we've got to be very clear that what we are saying is right now it is open-ended. And I don't know, and I think this is something we need to talk about. Do we have an expectation? I at this point have no expectation as to what date we are eventually going to be in a green light mode. I see, I know, I think Nancy's up. I want to speak to a couple things and then I'll throw it back since everybody else has had a chance. Dr. Welsh, if you could go to the red light, green light slide. I mean, I've been going back and forth with Dr. Welsh over the past few days. We've got a whole color-coded email going. And I honestly don't remember at the moment whether I literally said this or not, but I know I was going to, even if I hadn't, which kind of speaks to what Mrs. Bacon was saying, is I actually don't feel at all comfortable with yellow light. I feel that if we are going to look at, in-person instruction in a yellow light mode, that we have to be extraordinarily cautious as to what that looks like. There have been discussions. I know that the Arizona Department of Health Service 21-page or whatever that was, guidance that came out today started talking about hybrid models, whether or not that was the hybrid model or the PV Flex model that we had been talking about over the summer, or if that was a different type of hybrid model. I don't think we can use that. In my mind, I don't think that's where we're going to be in a quote unquote yellow light situation, because yellow light still requires a great deal, all of these mitigation strategies. One of the issues personally I had with what the Arizona Department of Health put out is that in a green light setting, they were basically removing the need for various mitigation strategies. And we, based on what Dr. Walsh said, we are not going to be doing that. I mean, they're basically saying, oh, no, you don't have to mask. Or not. I mean, the mitigation strategies they were putting in a green light mode, in my opinion, was way too minimal. And so obviously we have that ability to use our strategies that we feel are appropriate to keep our students and our staff and teachers and everybody else on campus safe. So as much as we're looking at this, I think we have to be very cautious about what we consider a yellow light scenario. And I do think it speaks somewhat to what Mrs. Bacon was saying in terms of we need to be at green going to red, not red going down. And we know that red is unsafe. I mean, basically, red is unsafe. Don't do it. We know that green is considered much, much safer. I don't see yellow as this, oh, well, it's kind of safe mode. I mean, to me, that's not good enough. And so I just wanted to throw that out. I do see Susan has her hand up, so I don't know if you've got something from Department of Health Services to throw in there or something
Well, I have
else.
a yellow light comment, but I don't want to, and Nancy hasn't talked yet, so I don't want to jump in if Nancy wanted to speak first. I wrote my things down, so.
I do have a comment that I think, am I on the screen? It's not showing, but okay.
Yes.
I think as we go forward in the next 3-4 weeks, places like New York, we can look at what precautions they're taking in the classroom and what's going on. It's not, we can observe who is being successful at reopening the schools. But that's going to take some time. But I think it's not just these metrics that we've been talking about. It's what is happening in other places. Did they start at yellow? Did it get worse? I mean, we have some time to observe and to think and to listen. And I would hope that the parents and teachers in our district would do so and do it methodically and thoughtfully about other school districts across the country who are in different places than we are currently. And so I just think we need to look at that. I know I have some grandchildren who are starting school with masks, and it will be interesting to watch them and to see what happens in their community. And so I just think we need to observe and be thoughtful and read a lot of sources and ask that our parents do also. Is coming together with masks still making the cases go up? I mean, there's just a lot of factors here. So I think we need to be thoughtful and looking at what is happening in other places as we're making those decisions to not just our own facts, but people with had our facts, what is happening if they're back in school. So just another comment there.
Thank you. Mrs. Matura?
All right. So I believe Dr. Welsh had said this, and this was my confusion too, and I had asked about it. But with the red, yellow, green, he did say that we would go from red to green, and yellow would be back on the way up. And I appreciate having the yellow because the state doesn't give any guidance at all about what happens when you hit your green light, and then, well, I guess they kind of did. Then you could change up some things, but I believe for our district, it was, we're green, we're going along great. If we start seeing it go above 5%, we don't have to just turn off, oh my gosh, we hit over 5% one week, let's just send everyone home. We know we're in that watch and see pattern. And as we see it keep going up, then we know where we're headed. And if it's able to turn around before we get back up again, we can get back down. And we didn't have to close if we were able to if people noticed what's happening and we're able to get it back down to green, we didn't have to completely shut off again. So I kind of liked that. Again, it starts at green And then if it moved to yellow, it could go back to green again. But you definitely wouldn't start in the yellow ever. That's what I was interpreting that to be. And also wanted to look at the fact that basically, if I'm doing my math correctly, we basically are having 4 weeks where we know where we're headed, because we have our first day where, we're going to be, hopefully we'll start trending down, and we're going to start seeing this. Everyone's going to be so excited and want to get the kids back to school that everyone's working together, and we're able to get our numbers down, and we're going to see the trend coming down. We're going to see it hit 5% on that first time. We're going to watch it stay there for 2 weeks. So that's our first 2 weeks. And then we say, okay, we've hit it for 2 weeks. Now we're going to, in 2 weeks, open. So we've had 4 weeks to kind of get our heads around the fact that that's where we're going to be. So our families have about a 1 month window of, we could see it hit 5% and jump right back up again. And then, that was a false start. But in most cases, people can start thinking about that we're going to be headed back. And so we basically, so today, if we wanted to be back in school 4 weeks from today, we would have to be at 5% today, and we know we aren't. But I hate to put a date on something when we have a 1 month, basically a 1 month window of when we're going to hit that first time we hit 5%, and we can then start thinking, okay, it's in about a month. And we can have hopes for that without setting a date on that today, but people can always know that we're about a month out from opening until we hit that 5%. And I do like Mrs. Bacon's idea of perhaps one of those 2 weeks that we do half days and allow teachers to be getting reacclimated and doing some projects there to get ready for back to school, because they will be working full days, but to allow them to have a half day off, I think that's a reasonable accommodation, and I would appreciate that being put out there. But I do think we're always 4 weeks out, and so it kind of gives you an idea of where we are today. That you can look forward 4 weeks and see where we're going to be. So we always have kind of a 4 week window, and we can hit that 5% and say, yes, please keep going, and get that direction. So that was my, but definitely yellow light is only on the way back up. It gives us a little bit of a window to bring it back down again to green without having to hit red, because then we can do an all out campaign to our community and say, hey guys, we're in a yellow light. We got to get this back to green. We do not want to hit red again. And it allows us some time in there to do that. So.
And I'll call on you in a second, Mrs. Bacon.
Yeah.
The one point I want to make, though, is we are also dealing with the fact that come August 17th, the governor has required us and every other school district to provide on-site support services. And I would like Dr. Welsh to speak to that in terms of what that really means for our district and what we are going to be providing, who we think we're going to be providing for, because it is my understanding that some of our students and teachers will be back on campus for some of our special programs. But, we're not even really in a yellow light situation, but we are being required to provide these support services. And unfortunately, I think in terms of communication, that gives mixed messages to our community and pretty much every community around the state. And so that is an additional issue I think we have to work on. And I understand that we are starting at green and yellow is, caution, caution, caution. But I still would like to see, as we do this, and I asked Dr. Welsh, how our experiences with our on-site support service provision, might that inform our return to classrooms? But I also do want to see, want some sort of sense of, what are we talking about really if we suddenly are in green and go to yellow? And, if we inform our families, by the way, we're in yellow, are we, if we've got families who have said, okay, I'm back in on PV traditional, but we hit yellow, I want to immediately go back on Pvusd Connect or something like that. Again, that may be part of that survey that to go in assessing, the return. How are we assessing family comfort levels with these levels of green, yellow, and red? So I don't know, sorry, Mrs. Bacon, I'll turn it over to Dr. Welsh and then we'll head back to you.
Sure, I'll touch on that briefly regarding the on-site support. So yeah, as was just shared, yeah, it's kind of like we're running a red light on that one by order of the governor. We know it's not safe right now for kids to be back in school, but we are required to provide that on-site support. We shared in our weekly communication to families yesterday some information regarding that. Also in alignment with that requirement, we've specifically reached out to students within targeted groups, those being some of our students who are on free and reduced lunch, our English language learners, our special education students, among others, like some of our families of first responders. And so that's going through our community education program. We have our mascot programs continuing. Those actually extend beyond the regular school day. So for those families who are looking for coverage before and after when school normally would be, those are continuing. Right now we have 6 sites planned. We will be looking at the level of interest of families on that. It's a quick turnaround because the 17th is coming very soon. So that closes Monday, and that gives us the time to then look at what that data is, make plans, make sure that we have sufficient staffing. Primarily it is, our ESPs who are in community ed and potentially other ESPs if we need additional staff that we'll pull from to be able to cite those. So we'll probably know more by early next week, obviously, what those numbers will look like and if we feel that we have sufficient capacity. We've been primarily focusing on providing those at our middle and high schools. And the reason for that is just because of the physical layout of those buildings and the spaces available in those buildings. Those buildings, unlike our elementary schools, have full-on cafeterias, they have gyms, which would allow us to set up seating for students, maintaining social distancing, and making sure that we have enough staff so that students and staff can be rotating through. If kids need a break, there's somebody who can walk them out and so forth. So that's our primary structure in terms of what that on-site support looks like. Yeah, I echo some of those same concerns regarding having students on our campuses at this point. We're being forced to run a red light when we know we shouldn't be.
Well, if nothing else, Dr. Welsh, it's an Arizona thing to do, running a red light. Aren't we like the #1 state with the most accidents from people running red lights or something? I don't know. Not good. I have a couple of other questions. So in that time frame that we're closed, like when we know, so we've hit 5%, we have the period of time before we open schools back up. I think we need to give our parents and our families something to do as well. And that is prepare their kids for the start of school. Mm-hmm. So let's create videos on wearing masks, how to properly wear a mask. Let's create fun videos on cool things you can look like when you wear a mask. I don't know, like come up with a song, do a parody. Well, I don't know what it looks like. But I think we've got to do something to engage our families in educating students before they get to us, so that when they get to us, they're not standing there looking at us with a mask like, what's going on? I don't know what this is. So, and talking with, a lot of kids, I think, are out there going, I don't want to go to school. It's not safe, because that's what we've been telling them. So giving our families the words to say that are developmentally appropriate. So maybe some of our social workers and our lead social emotional learning folks can work those things into things that teachers can provide to parents and students. So as they're learning online, as they're doing PV Connect or PV Online, there are resources there for our families so that they can prepare their kids. Some kids are going to be scared. Others are going to be racing back in, like so excited. And I think all of them, when they get there, will be excited, as we all will be as well. So that was just the other thing that I was thinking about. Two other things. One is when we start seeing those students back in our schools starting on August 17th, I guess my one question is, any thoughts that he's going to put, that Governor Ducey will push that back, or we had
I haven't heard any indications along those lines.
Okay. So I think that's something that I would like for you, Dr. Welsh, and your cabinet, and maybe some other superintendents to really hit home with the governor's office, is that's not a safe time. We're still not in a safe zone. We've developed these metrics. Your Department of Health has developed metrics. We're not there, so why are we welcoming students back? And I know there are issues. I mean, I know we have students who really do need physical space to be at, but I also know I'd rather have them alive than not. So
yeah, absolutely. And I know and I know I echoed some of those same concerns. I actually met with Caitlin Harrier, who is the governor's liaison for education, Friday, and shared some of those same concerns. I can share that, through, and I know President Greenberg and I shared a letter with the governor. Gosh, was it this week? I'm losing track of days. Feels like forever ago. With some of those same concerns, we'll keep tooting that horn on that. That noise is being made.
Good. I think the other thing that we are going to need before we can ask families and employees to make any decisions about how they'll proceed, whether it's in person, PV Connect, whatever their situation is going to be, I think we need to provide to them the plan and the procedures that we're going to follow with a positive COVID case in a school. If they don't know what that's going to look like, they can have no assurances that we're even thinking about it. So I think now that we've developed these metrics, which, by the way, amazing work. Thank you so much. I think PV's been leading the way in this drive across the valley, and I'm pleased that that's happening. And I know Dr. Von Echten led much of those committees, and I would like to thank him profusely for the work that he's doing. This is not probably anything he ever imagined he'd be doing when he got a teaching degree or a doctorate in education. So I want to thank them for that. But I wonder now if it's time to shift to look at what do we do? What's the public health ramifications in terms of notifications? I mean, we notify an entire class if there's strep in it and lice. It seems to me that we should be able to notify an entire class if there's a COVID case. So that's something I think we need some direction on. Our families are going to need some direction on, and our employees are going to need direction on. So that was and I wanted to say.
Yeah, and just adding on to that, I know that that was something in our conversation with Dr. Sonnenschein this morning, myself and other superintendents with NEVIC. Maricopa County has indicated that they have heard that, and we really want some of that information to be coming from them. We think they're the best source for that. They've given indications that will. I also know that if that doesn't happen, then as we've been doing, we will lead and we will make sure that we have that out there, because I wholeheartedly agree. I think parents need to know what that's going to look like. And I also, again, I thank you to Dr. Van Echten. I also want to thank Dr. Lillian Lau, Michelle Pvusd, Heather Ross, who were some of our medical professionals who have provided a lot of input and feedback. I feel like I got like maybe a little bit of a medical understanding, a little medical degree, mini degree, I don't know, just through all of this stuff. I've learned a lot, probably more than I thought I would learn about the medical area as well.
Yeah, it's Kristen Lau.
Oh, Kristen Lau, I'm sorry, yes.
That's okay. I just want to make sure she gets her proper due.
Yes, absolutely.
Susan?
Yes, a couple of things. One, for our open ESP positions, I know we've been ongoing, still trying to hire bus drivers and everything throughout this? Are we still trying to hire and fill these positions right now? We're not going to wait until the 2-week notice and try to fill those positions then. This is an ongoing project because we have use for those people right now and following up with the online things as well. So I'm assuming we're keeping on doing that.
I'm sure the answer is yes, but Dr. Bales,
Okay.
you want to confirm a little bit where we're at?
Absolutely. Happy to, President Greenberg, Mrs. Mature, and guests. We certainly are continuing to hire. We have we've tried to plan for a September 8th start date for many of these positions, and we're going to proceed with bringing those folks on board tonight. You, in the consent agenda, you adopted a resolution that talked about acknowledgement of pay during these difficult times, and our employees will be signing a acknowledgement of pay form tomorrow that coincides with the executive order and your resolution that you adopted tonight. And so we'll be proceeding with employment recommendations effective September 8th. For those that were on hold, there are many positions that we have been proceeding on and bringing on boarding on now anyway, because they're crucial to our critical operations. There was a few of them that we just thought we'd put a hold on until we knew whether or not we needed them and whether or not we'd had to find essential functions for them to do. But we actually talked today about probably developing another virtual job fair for our ESP positions during that time, since we know we will have probably a month, as Mrs. Mature pointed out, between that period of time of 5% and a start date. So we will certainly be developing those plans. It's very, very difficult. As of today, there are still 78 ESP positions in the paraeducators alone. And most of those are one-on-ones or self-contained program aides. And so it's extremely difficult. And, that's a workforce that's primarily of older age. And I think that by using metrics that are described tonight, that will maybe give them the comfort to know that we're not asking them to come back and start until it's safe. And so there's probably still a few individuals that are immunocompromised, that are high risk, that will never feel safe. But at least with these metrics, I believe that will assure them that we will start at a time that's safe, and that will certainly help with the application numbers and the applications for people that are interested in working for us.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I have a couple of more things. One is there are some videos out there that I think she's one of our teachers who works with the Women in Technology program. I've been seeing her post some videos out there about wearing a mask, and they're very cute. And it stuck in my head, and I forwarded it to my sister for her kids too. And these little girls talk about how wearing a mask isn't a task, it's kindness. And so it's really a cute way to show little kids saying, oh, I have to wear a mask. And then the sister teaches her that it's showing kindness. It's not a task. And so there are a few of those videos out there that I know our own staff have been putting together. So I think those are fun. I love the idea of getting the kids ready, though, and they can watch some of these fun things and make it sound more fun as they're moving forward. So we do have that started there. I have been watching those videos. Something else, just wanted to point out, because there's a lot of confusion for what this on-site learning looks like if we are forced to run the red light and start on the 17th. And just really reminding people that what it is it's a seat to sit in that would be supervised while they are learning on their Chromebooks that have been provided to them. So they have a seat in a building with someone to watch over the cohorts who will stay together and stay 6 feet apart from each other, hopefully, and remain in their seat. And I'm assumed it's going to be the same seat in the same cohort daily, but learning from their distance learning on their Chromebooks, just like everyone else. So it's not on-site learning. It is just on-site care, I guess. But I did want to make sure that people are clear on that, because I think sometimes people see that, oh, my child can go to school on the 17th. Excellent. And kind of gloss over what that really looks like. And so I just wanted to make sure that that families are clear on what that is. And I understand that it is necessary. I understand it's a red light. So I know that there's all of these issues that are still out there, but for families just to understand what that really looks like for for being on site during those days.
Yeah, Mrs. Matura, you read my mind. This is Mrs. Bacon. I was just going to say something about it being really, it's more like childcare, supervised, someone supervising, but it's not going to be a teacher teaching in real time.
Oh, wait, that's my question. Is it going to be a teacher? If we don't have enough paraprofessionals, let's ask Dr. Welsh.
Yeah, no, we do have, at least based on what we anticipate being the demand, sufficient staff through community ed to be able to staff that with our ESPs.
Our teachers will be teaching to all of those kids.
Correct. I mean, that's the challenge. The teachers, as we pointed out in our letter to the governor, myself and President Greenberg, our teachers are teaching. So we assumed and anticipated that that is something that teachers can't do. That we can't expect teachers to be watching kids at the same time that they're teaching kids online. It just doesn't work.
I think, another term we probably could use might be study hall. In essence, that's probably a little bit more accurate because we are going to hope that our students are on their Chromebooks in their classrooms, but on their Chromebooks. I think it would be helpful, and I realize we're a little bit off topic on the discussion of the metrics, but if Dr. Welsh, if you could talk a little bit more about what we are expecting our on-site support services to look like. I know because you and I have talked about this, the reasons behind using the larger schools, the high schools and the middle schools, because there is a greater amount of space. But with that, we are basically saying, ooh, we have a cafeteria, so we could put 50 students in that cafeteria because that's the amount of space we have. Yes, they will be physically distanced and wearing masks, presumably, and participating in all of the safety protocols that we have in place. But it could still be 50 students sitting in the cafeteria. So, if that's the case, we'll use that 50. How many staff members are we planning to also have with them? And will that vary if we are talking 50 elementary students versus 50 high school students? If you could just give us a little bit more background. And the reason I say I'm bringing this up, and I realize this is not what we're talking about when we're talking in-person instruction. But if somebody drives by our schools, they're going to see that we have students on campus. And, is everybody else going to be able to go, oh, okay, that's just on-site support services. That's not but if you have students on campus, why aren't all students on campus? And I think that's, it's not just that we're in red light. I think it is the perception of bringing students back on campus and what that looks like in the overall scheme of things.
No, sure thing. And if I could, I'll actually have Dr. Jarrett share some of the specific details because I know he's been working with community ed department on a lot of the logistics as we're rolling that out. So Dr. Jarrett, if you don't mind.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Welsh and President Greenberg. So yes, as Dr. Welsh mentioned, we are using primarily our middle schools and high schools because of the size, looking at an opportunity with the larger cafeteria and gym to spread out to help socially distance our students. Also, one of our goals is to these on-site support programs away from the instructional building, because we do have teachers coming into the classrooms, and we're trying to minimize or reduce the footprint traffic on our campuses. And so the gyms are more separated in those campuses than they are at the elementary level. So that's kind of just summing that piece of it up. Within those settings, then, we're looking at about a 10-to-1 ratio. We're going to keep students in groups of 10 or less based on age level and perhaps other unique needs as we're looking through the list of who's signing up, if they're EL learners or perhaps if they're special needs learners and have some common needs. We would keep them in those cohorts and match them up. But we're looking at about 10 students, groups of 10, one ESP leader. We're going to have additional leaders in the room as well, additional ESP staff. to help keep making sure that when students need breaks, we have somebody available to take a student outside and let them stretch, to allow our ESPs to rotate and have their own breaks as well. So for a group of about 50, we're looking at a staff of about 12 to 13 ESPs in that room. And yes, to summarize, it is not instruction. Students will be doing in this room what they would be doing at home. They'll be online, engaging with their classroom teacher through their computer, and the support staff will be there to help maybe address some technical issues, help make sure students are doing okay, but primarily just be there for supervision purposes.
Thank you, Dr. Cheris. That gave me what we need. Mrs. Bacon, I see your hands up.
Well, I just have one quick question for Dr. Jaris. I know that Mrs. Greenberg said presumably masks will be worn, but I want to know 100% masks will be worn.
Masks are being worn, yes.
Thank you.
So,
Yes, Mrs. Case.
so just for parents to think that all the way through, at home, a child would not have to wear a mask while they're doing online education. But if a student is on campus, they will be wearing a mask while they're doing online. Just clarifying that.
Yes.
Correct.
Dr. Skidmore?
Some of our special education children are really medically fragile, and they have special medical services that they receive daily in our schools. I suspect we will have a nurse on site, but do we have a responsibility, or are we providing attention to those medical needs?
By all means, we will have nursing services available, and just as we do with our mascot programs, they'll be also trained we'll have leaders in there who are trained to administer medication, and that is part of one of the things we're doing right now, is looking at the list and determining where those needs are and what additional support we may need. We might be targeting specific ESPs to bring back based on the unique needs. For example, if we have some students coming from some programs, or from a student who has, let's just say they're medically fragile, coming from a specific campus, we might be able to bring an ESP from that campus who already knows that student and is familiar with some of those needs, or from some of the special needs programs as well for those students who have unique needs. It would just be helpful for them to have somebody there who's familiar with them and is better able to respond to them and help them out.
Thank you, Dr. Jaris. Now I'm going to switch the topic here, and I'm going to really throw a wrench into the pot. We are at red, and red says we can't do anything. So tell me about football.
I would love to, Dr. Skidmore. I think perhaps we're a little off of the topic here, since we, for our agenda item, indicated we're talking about the health metrics. So I can certainly provide more information. I know I did, but I want to make sure that we're keeping in line with open meeting law.
Well, I realize that, but you can't ask me about metrics, get me to vote on metrics. If the minute I vote on this metric, I'm going to turn around and violate it on September the 7th. So, that's just my point. And I want to go on record as saying that I will, whatever happens, I can vote on this. But the plan is to violate it come September the 7th with sports. So just go ahead.
Well, I think what I can share along those lines, and keeping with the topic, is, and I know I've shared this with some others, it doesn't make sense to me that we say that it's not safe for students to be back on campus wearing masks, in groups of 20 to 30, but on the same hand say that for some reason we think it's safe for students not wearing masks, engaging in physical contact with one another, to be back on campus. To me, that would be a dichotomy that could not be resolved. So I think that speaks at least to where I'm coming from on that. To me, until we are in that green light phase, I don't know that we could be talking about students returning for that type of activity. And I understand, of course, the AIA, it would seem, has a different perspective than I do. I don't know what planet they're on with that one, to be honest.
Okay. Okay, Dr. Skidmore, I hope that answered. As Dr. Wells just said, we really do need to focus. We have an agenda item that we need to vote on. One thing I wanted to comment, maybe ask, we'll see if there's a question mark at the end of my comment, is to go back to the testing aspect of how we reach the metrics. Because that's what that is. That's how we're going to know. And I can't remember if I texted or sent this to you in an email, but something I saw, for example, online today, I believe it was on Twitter. There are programs starting with districts to offer testing. I think we're going to hopefully learn more about that. I think, Dr. Welsh, you were going to try, and I don't know if you had a chance today, because I think that was after hours when I sent it to you. But I think we all have to be aware that testing is a huge part of this. And so I think to the extent that we can either get involved in a program like that, which was offering testing to districts, some districts are piloting, I guess we could say, or working through, a health insurer, a pharma company. I don't know who, I don't care, Sonora Quest themselves, but finding out how we as a district can tap into testing programs, because it's exactly what we've been talking about. Until there is widespread testing, the positivity rate isn't going to go down, because there just is not going to be enough testing to know, to get that at a widespread enough level. So I'm hoping that we can find some program to participate that will allow our parents, our students, our teachers, our, everybody in the PV community to be able to access that testing and access it frequently, so that we are aware, and that helps with the issue of contact tracing as well. The more we get and the sooner we know, the better we can handle everything that comes. So again, maybe that wasn't a question, but I guess if there are programs out there, I hope we can find them and participate in them.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with that. I mean, that helps to get to that level of testing that we need to be at. I mean, that's part of what that metric really indicates, is that there's sufficient testing within the community to meet the demand.
Exactly. Does anybody else on the board have any other questions for Dr. Welsh or Dr. Jarris or Dr. Bales or anybody?
Mrs. Greenberg,
Yes.
Susan Matura, I do.
Thank you.
Something I wanted to mention was something I read in the state paperwork today, was the before they had been offering the 5 free masks to those over 65, and today it came out with the guidance to schools offering 5 free masks. And so I want to make sure that we can get that information out to families. I am hopeful that perhaps when they put that in there saying that they would be providing masks, knowing that students would need them to come back, that perhaps they are have some options with some smaller size masks there, and that they're not just looking at huge adult sizes. So I don't know where they are on that, but I did want to make sure that that is out there, because that will help us get down faster and also help those students get back to school and have 5 masks, which would be really helpful to have their masks for the week. So just wanted to point that out and make sure we are providing information to that as well.
Yeah, if there's opportunity there, we will definitely take advantage of that.
Okay, does anybody else have anything else to say? I wanted to throw one thing, because I wrote myself a note, and when we were talking about, perhaps having videos about masks and things like that, I just want to say, I think there are other things we're going to need to have videos about as well, because campuses are not, we aren't approaching campuses as being the same facilities they were pre-COVID. So obviously there will be physical distancing. Obviously there will be, I presume different campuses are going to perhaps look at one-way school halls or, or hallways, or how the cafeteria is going to look is going to be different. So I think we need to be looking at all of those, and whether that becomes a PDF per school type of situation to have specific photos related to that school, or we are able to do perhaps some videos, etc. I think that would behoove us to look into, and again, start doing that now in preparation for hitting that green light, which we're going to do as soon as we can. I know there was a great one out there by a principal in Alabama, and I suspect almost everybody on this call has probably seen it, where it was done. They redid the lyrics of "You Can't Touch This," and it was spectacular. Not sure we're going to get to that if we're going to have one like that, but I would suggest if we can, we should. But I do think, again, that goes to the communication aspect of what we need to do, and I think we can do it in a great way that will be informative and positive in the same way, in the same vein. So Mrs. Case.
Yeah, we had talked about having extra hand washing stations. Are those getting finished now? We were going to have a lot of them put in by the first day of school, and I'm just wondering where those, but it was going to be really difficult. How are we doing with those?
Sure, I'll turn that over to Ms. Felton. I can share just even anecdotally, as I was walking through schools the first day, I noticed in terms of the additional sinks and the installation, I saw many of those already in place. And I know I saw some information just today from our facilities folks in terms of the additional hand sanitizer stations at the elementary, middle, and high school level, and the timeline on that. And they were able to secure a source, and those are coming, but I'm sure Ms. Felton can probably provide some more specific details regarding both of those items.
Thank you for that question, Mrs. Case. Yes, we'll absolutely have all those hand washing sinks in. They were all going to be in definitely by the original September start date, which is looking, as we're discussing now, increasingly unlikely. So yes, there is no problem having them all in place.
And also, those would need to be included with information with students coming back, just to let them know and see that that will be part of the routine in the films, photos, or whatever.
Yes. I don't think we want the facility gentleman doing that, but I bet that someone's going to be doing that.
Right.
Right on, right on.
Great. All right. Does anybody else have any questions or comments? Otherwise, I think we are ready to vote. I don't know, Dr. Welsh, if you want to put the slide back up. Does anybody
Sure.
feel the need to put the slide back up? No. Okay. I see Mrs. Bacon shaking her head no. Mrs. Case. Okay. Don't worry about putting the slide back up then. So Dr. Skidmore, unless somebody else has anything else for the good of the order, unfortunately, I'm not seeing Mrs. Matura on screen. Dr. Skidmore, okay, I'm going to assume not. Dr. Skidmore, may I have a motion to approve the recommendations for our, my iPad went away, so I'm going to leave it to you to read the motion and make it to approve the recommendations for reopening.
Thank you, Mrs. Greenberg. And I want you to listen very carefully. I move to approve public health benchmarks for the safe return to in-person, teacher-led, and the most important word here, classroom instruction.
Thank you. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Dr. Skidmore?
Well, before I vote, obviously these benchmarks are for a classroom, not for any other activity that we might have on our campus. I vote aye.
Mrs. Matura,
Aye.
Mrs. Greenberg,
Aye.
Mrs. Case,
You're muted, Mrs. Case.
Aye.
Thank you.
Mrs. Bacon,
Aye.
Thank you very much. At 8:54 on August 6th, we have voted unanimously to approve the public health benchmarks for a safe return to in-person teacher-led classroom instruction. Next on the agenda is consideration approval to award the contract for online classroom courseware. Dr. Welsh, or shall I just turn it over to I will turn it over to Mrs. Felton, I presume.
Yeah, actually, this one's
sorry.
gonna. No, you're okay. This one's actually going to go over to Mr. Long.
Thank you. Sorry.
Good evening, President Greenberg, governing board members, Dr. Welsh, and PV community. Pvusd first contracted with Edgenuity for work during the 2019-2020 school year. More specifically, we contracted with them to obtain their learning platform and learning resources for 9th through 12th grade homebound services and special education students. During the spring of 2020, I met with Bessie Mays, our former coordinator of PV Online, to discuss her concerns regarding the materials that were in use for our small number of K-8 students in PV Online. The courses had not been updated regularly, and many of the new standards are not addressed. There was only a part-time teacher working with that small grade level, so it would be difficult to build those courses. A decision was made to investigate Edgenuity as an option and use it in much the same way as we were using with the 9-12 homebound and special education students. Obviously, that conversation changed this summer as discussions began regarding the start of school being delayed and the options that families would be given for instructional programming. We knew that there would be a larger number of students in PV Online at the K-8 level, and our existing courses would not meet our needs. Your approval this evening would expand our use of Edgenuity to kindergarten through 8th grade and also continue the limited use at the 9th through 12th grade level for homebound services and special education students.
Thank you, Mr. Long. I'm sorry, does anybody have any questions? Unfortunately, I'm not seeing people on my screen, so if somebody has any questions, you can unmute yourself and jump in because I can't see you to call on you.
This is Mrs. Bacon. Everyone shook their head no.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it. The one question I do have is if we could, maybe just a brief discussion as to why we felt Edgenuity was the most appropriate provider or best provider of the courseware.
Yes, we were already using their services and we were having much success, and the students and families that were utilizing it were also very fond of the program. It is robust, very communicative. It's not just a platform where students sit and get. There's lots of interactive videos and activities as well.
When you say families, yeah, which families are you talking about?
Those students who were placed in homebound and special education services were using Edgenuity as part of being at home.
Okay, and I'm going to be very honest with you. I'm a little bit surprised at hearing that you felt that the families and students felt that that worked for them, because that's somewhat opposite to some of the feedback I had heard. And I just want to throw that out there, that I have been made aware of, both from families and from other folks who've been involved in the homebound program, that it has not worked well in that setting, or as well as we would hope in that setting.
I have heard opposite of that. I have heard a parent who's very involved in this district liked it a lot. So, for what it's worth. And her child liked it a lot.
My presumption is there are going to be some who do and some who don't. I just, I unfortunately have heard from many who have had a less than positive experience, shall we say.
We will certainly evaluate as we move along because it is from year to year, President Greenberg. Even if it goes away for the K-8, we can certainly evaluate if it's still meeting the needs of our 9-12 homebound students as we move forward.
If I may ask, in terms of how, the cost of the program, I mean, is this a per course, per pupil, per how, if you can go into a little bit in terms of, I mean, it's not an insignificant contract that we're being asked to approve. So
no, okay, no problem. Currently, the 9-12 piece is a per student use. So it depends on how many students we have involved. For our middle school use, for the contract that we're looking at tonight is a site license because it was more advantageous to use a site license for all the middle schools rather than per student. And then our elementary level, Edgenuity has been offering a statewide price because of COVID that is per student as well. At a discount.
Okay, so how is that filtering out, I guess I should say, in terms of levels? In terms of 9-12?
I'm not sure of the number of 9-12 as of yet as we're working through the homebound placements for this year. Generally, we would secure about 90 licenses. Most of those will get used. At the elementary level right now, we're using right now, families are still shifting, but we're using about 500 licenses, and we're using about it's about 200 or so middle school students right now. And if we went per pupil, it's actually more expensive than the site license. So right now, the site licenses were secure for middle school. And once we get all settled, all of those materials will also be available for those teachers and schools to use as they wish as well. That may not be involved in PV Online. Obviously not a requirement, but some additional resources that they can utilize.
Okay, and I don't mean to, be the only person asking questions, but apparently I was the only one who did have questions, so I guess whatever. And of course, in saying that, I just sort of lost my train of thought. No, found it again. We are obviously offering the option of PV Connect or PV Online right now. Those are our only two options, but we are allowing our students and families, for those who have chosen PV Online, at least for the first quarter or first semester, depending on their grade level, to transition back to the classroom if we are back in the classroom, and we will be, again, after the quarter or the semester break. Does that change how, we're dealing with this Edgenuity contract if we suddenly have, well, I'm just going to pick a number, 1,000 students participating in semester one, but 300 participating in semester two?
Right now, according to what we've secured, it's just an X number of licenses that are not rolling. I don't want to confuse it. So the high school numbers roll. Our elementary numbers do not roll. So we have, at this contract, we went up to 1,300 students, I do believe, on this particular contract because they're not rolling. So if we have a number of students who, let's say, want to switch to PV Online, we will be able to accommodate.
I'm talking more about if we have students switching off. So we're basically paying for something we're not using.
That could be a possibility.
Okay, and that was Mrs. Felton, did you want to? I think the camera caught you moving your hand, and so it switched to you on my screen.
I apologize.
No, that's okay. I'm just curious because, again, this is not a small contract. I do realize, and certainly I've had these discussions with Dr. Welsh and others, we have had a more robust program in our 9 to 12 PV online offerings because that has been the greatest interest. And we have had much less interest in K through 8 because we're in a situation where we are offering this. We want to be able to provide a greater variety and more robust programming in K through 8. I sincerely hope moving forward that we are able to reduce our reliance on Edgenuity within our PV Online program, and that it is truly PV Online, not use of programming that we may be teaching, but we are not creating or producing, shall we say.
Yeah, and President Greenberg, I know we've talked a little bit about that as well. I mean, I think that is obviously our goal and direction moving forward in terms of where we want to be with the K-8 with PV Online. Obviously, with online course development, it takes time, it takes people, and it takes the resources to do that. The irony is I've done that before. And it definitely, think about what a teacher does in terms of their lesson planning for a whole year, digitize that and put it online. I mean, just think about how much time a teacher puts into their lesson plans for a year and translate that to an online. So, I mean, there's definitely obviously a lot of work that has to be done with that, but I know that is something that we will be focusing on because I agree with you that at least content gets you out of a bind, but it is not a sustainable method, in my opinion, of being able to offer online courseware.
And this is Mrs. Matura. I just want to, I appreciate that we were able to find an in-the-box product to offer and not try to force an entire curriculum for K-8 to magically or not magically appear and rely on our staff and teachers and to try to develop something like that in our short period of time that we've had. And I also am very glad we have this opportunity for our younger students to be able to participate in an online environment and to have that option available for them for the entire year. I think it's really important, and I'm glad that we have that program available to them. Also, I feel that having a named product, people have heard of it. Other districts are using it, so it kind of allows some families to have a known quantity going into it. So I'm hopeful that they will find it helpful and useful, but not all states are even allowing this. I have family in other states that don't have options like this for the younger kids. And so it's, I appreciate that we have this able to get rolling and have all of that content available on day one for our students.
Thank you, Ms. Matura. Does anybody else have any other comments or questions? If not, Dr. Skidmore, may I have a motion to approve the contract?
So move.
And may we have a roll call vote, please?
Dr. Skidmore?
Aye.
Mrs. Matura?
Aye.
Mrs. Greenberg?
I will vote aye, but I really request that we keep a watch on usage and we get some idea of how well this is working for us. Thank you.
Mrs. Case?
Aye.
Mrs. Bacon?
Aye.
Thank you. 9:08 on August 6th, we have voted unanimously to approve this contract. Next on the agenda is consideration approval for CMAR for Roadrunner School renovations. I assume this one goes to Mrs. Belton.
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, President Greenberg, Governing Board, and Dr. Welsh. Before you for your consideration this evening is the Construction Manager at Risk, or CMAR, for the Roadrunner Rebuild Project. The process for selecting this Construction Manager at Risk has been a lengthy process and does meet all the statutory requirements. It's actually driven by statutory requirements. The process began in May by issuing a request for proposal, or RFP, and that went to 268 vendors, as well as we published a notice in the Arizona Business Journal. Of these vendors, 9 submitted formal responses. A committee of 5, and again, that was statutorily driven, meets all the statutes, reviewed the proposal and thoroughly discussed the strengths and weaknesses of each proposal. After this review and interviews with the 2 finalist firms, the committee top ranking selection was Sun Valley Builder. Sun Valley Builder may be a new name to you, but they have been successfully working for the district on various projects since 2016, including the Desert Shadows Middle School gym renovations and 3 large interior renovation projects at elementary schools, just to name a few. They have completed new constructions for other districts across the state, including Gilbert Unified School District, Phoenix Union School District, and Central Arizona Institute of Technology. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have, and I do request approval of this recommendation.
Thank you, Mrs. Felton. Does anybody have any questions for Mrs. Felton? Mrs. Case?
It's more of a comment. I'm happy to see a new face in our construction going forward. Thank you.
We are also. We like to have choices.
Thank you. Mrs. Bacon, oh, nope, you just muted yourself. Okay, I see everybody else. I don't see Mrs. Matura, but since she's not chiming in, Dr. Skidmore, I will ask you for a motion to approve.
So move.
And may we have a roll call vote, please?
Dr. Skidmore,
Aye.
Mrs. Matura,
Aye.
Mrs. Greenberg,
Aye.
Mrs. Case,
Aye.
Mrs. Bacon.
Aye.
Thank you. At 9:11 on August 6th, we have unanimously approved this motion. Last on our agenda is ratification of vouchers. Dr. Skidmore, may I have a motion, please?
So move.
And may we have a roll call vote, please?
Dr. Skidmore,
Aye.
Mrs. Matura,
Aye.
Mrs. Greenberg,
Aye.
Mrs. Case,
Aye.
Mrs. Bacon.
Abstain.
Thank you. By a vote of 4-0 with 1 abstention, we have approved this at 9:11 on August 6th. That is the last thing on our agenda for the evening. I just want to let everybody know we have our next meeting is August 20, so 2 weeks from today. We also will have a study session that day, and we are finishing topics for that. And but the next meeting will be we'll start at 7 on August 20. And presumably will also be virtually. So with that, Dr. Skidmore, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
I don't think we need a roll call on this one. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. That sounds like a unanimous vote. Thank you very much, everybody. At 9:12 on 8/6, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, all.
Bye, all.
Good night.